Okay. Well, those people are going to miss all that. Anybody checking in late? For all your people checking in late now, uh, we're working with the breath and wounds. Working with the breath and wounds. So here's a poem called Inspiration. It goes like this: Breath opens the wound. Breath opens the wound. Breath is in the wound. Breath is in the wound. Breath is the wound. Breath is the wound. Breath heals the wound. Breath heals the wound. It's actually the way I see this poem is it isn't a linear poem in the sense of having a beginning and an end. It's more like a circular poem. When you play a woodwind instrument, uh, you normally use circular breathing. You know, you've got the didgeridoo or the flute or the saxophone or whatever, and you're breathing in through the nose and then breathing out through the mouth and then in through the nose and then out through the mouth. It's a kind of circular breathing, they call it. It's in all the traditions, and this book here by Will Johnson, uh, it just deals with the Buddhist sutras on breathing, and it's probably the one thread that knits together all the Buddhist practices, which are very diverse. Like there's a whole lot of different kinds of Buddhist practices, just as in Christianity or Islam or anything else. But the one thread that links all the Buddhist practices together, whether you're insight, Zen, Vipassana, Tibetan, tantric, the breath is key. The breath is key. It's the thing we take the most uh, for granted. And it's good because if you had to think about every in breath and out breath, that would be sort of worrisome. So it is sort of automatic, but it is pretty vital. You can live for several days, maybe a month without food. You know, you can live, maybe a week without water, but 3 minutes or something. Breath, it's life itself. So breath opens the wound. Breath is in the wound. Breath is the wound. Breath heals the wound. There's a kind of circularity there. The other book that I just have here, just for that is interesting, that changed my life as well, is a book just called Breath by James Nestor. Uh, it's an unlikely book, but it was very helpful to me. Uh, and it's a whole book about breath in different cultures. And the guy was Nestor was a guy who was covering guys who were diving for pearls with no apparatus. They were just guys who learned how to breathe and actually go down for 4 or 5 minutes grabbing for pearls. And so they were sort of super athletes. And then he went to interview him and he got interested in breath all over the world. It's a fantastic read. And it can do anything from lead you deeper into spiritual practice to reduce your snoring, which my wife was really glad about. So, yeah, breath. So let's go back to this first one. Breath opens the wound. Well, how is that? How is that? Breath opens the wound. Well, here's a quote from Genesis. This is mythology by the Jewish folks who were trying to explain the basic questions of that all human beings have. Uh, where do we come from? What are we? And where are we going? Well, this sort of covers at least the first two questions. Uh, Here's Genesis 2. This is before we get to Genesis 3 in the Garden of Eden, which is the only thing anybody ever remembers. They remember Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, which was the divine source saying how good everything is. Oh, and it was good, and it was really good. And then he decides to create human beings. And this is how it reads in Genesis 2. It says Yahweh, which was really, we print the word, but the Jewish folk would not say the word because you can't really have a word or an idea that would cover the divine, but Christians did it. Yahweh God fashioned man of dust from the soil. Then he breathed into his nostrils a breath of life, and thus man became a living being. So it's a bunch of dust, and the divine breathes in through the nostrils of the dust. I mean, it's a little, you got to take it as a metaphor, but there's something important there because the in breath comes in through the nose, and then we're born. And now we have a human body. And actually, that is opening the wound. Because when we were born, we were fine before we were born. In utero, everything was ducky. We felt great. We could really trust this universe. Food on demand, low lighting. What else do you want? All your needs are met there. All your needs are met there. In most 99.99% of the pregnancies, it's the greatest. It's the greatest. And then all of a sudden, this thing we trusted starts crushing us at 100 pounds per square inch, and then we're expelled after a lot of bumping. And my sister's first birthing my nephew Jake, it went 36 hours of labor because she was into being pure like somebody else in the family, and then she said, I'm not going to take anything to help the thing. So it was 36 hours. Jake came out as one big bruise, and so the wounds there of trusting it and then not understanding that the contractions were actually to birth you, otherwise everything would have gone badly. We don't see it. We just feel like betrayed there. Then we're expelled from this water environment into air, huge astrodome, huge beings running around. You take your first breath. See, first time you breathe, really, you're getting oxygen really from, in the water and whatever. You're sort of amphibian. So with that first breath is, it's the first wound is open. We carry a lot from that moment. It's first trauma for everybody. Everybody's a trauma survivor in my book. I know I am because there was that. So breath opens the wound. Yeah. Breath is in the wound. We're breathing from that point on. Your heart might miss a beat, but unless you hold your breath, and we do that in certain circumstances, the breath goes on. How many breaths in a lifetime? Breath is in the wound. So now we have the wound and we have the breath. Okay. Breath is in the wound. And then suddenly breath is the wound. There's not two, but there's one. Breath heals the wound. There's healing at the end of this process of trauma. Now, how that actually works out in a life, and there's not just one cycle of the healing of the traumas, and then we're born into all kinds of situations. Imagine being born into warfare or poverty. These are all kinds of contributing traumas, and so there's not just one wound. And then it's how you were looked at by your mother, how you were received by your family. There's wounds aplenty for all of us. It's like Toys R Us. It's wounds are us to be a human being. And but the prediction of this poem is that the breath is with all of those. I was talking to somebody that had a problem, which I had a problem initially with the idea that Jesus died on the cross to forgive my sins, and it was sort of muddled theology for me as a young guy, young, like fourth grader. I remember asking the sister, Jesus died to forgive our sins. Uh, how come we're still sinning? And does he forgive those future sins? And how come we have to go to confession if Jesus has already taken care of this? And those are thorny questions. They're good questions. And I got the normal reply. Well, I don't know, Joseph. That's a great mystery. We'll have to ponder that, won't we, in the silence of our heart? And I said, yes, sister, okay, but but that was a good answer because those are mysteries. This whole thing's a mystery, you see. Uh, so breath. I mean, the first beatitude is about the breath. When it got translated, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, the poor in breath." What does that really mean? My rendering of that was, "Blessed are the humble, who know in their wisdom that sacred breath is really their only possession. But in this poverty, they are fully empowered." When you realize the power of the breath, anything else can be taken from you. And actually, if somebody could kill you or strangle you, they could take the human breath from you. But the sacred breath, no, that goes on. That's your real power, the power of the breath. Jesus was laying it out there in the very first, because he was talking to poor people who didn't have squat, but they had the sacred breath in them. They could learn to use the sacred breath. Yeah. Well, when I was talking to this guy about the Jesus dying for our sins and where was God in all this, and I said, well, I don't buy that atonement thing anymore. And I told him uh, that where was God in that? Well, God was right there on the cross when we suffer. It's in Elie Wiesel's book Night, where they're hanging 3 or 4 Jews to make an example out of them, and somebody in the crowd says, "Where is God? Where is God now?" The concentration camps, turned out a lot of atheists who just gave up on God. And somebody in the crowd said, "It's up there on the scaffold." And that's another way of looking at God, at the divine. The divine is with you. The breath is in the wound. You're not suffering alone. That's a totally different kind of theology, but there it is. Then the breath is the wound. There's something of that where the two become one, which is really what we are invited to experience in meditation, where you can actually um, be united. The image of the dance, and I'm thinking of classical dance, where you have Fred and Ginger, or ballroom dancing, where two people are moving, they become like one. So the breath is the wound. Finally, the breath heals the wound. It's a great mystery, but I want to really suggest that learning how to breathe, and especially to use the sacred breath as a way to go from the trap of the mind through the body to the depths of consciousness, what I call the depths of the heart, the deepest part of the heart, that the sacred breath can be that bridge. It's so hard to get out of the mind and all the voices and the surface tension of cognition. And the sacred breath can help you. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to suggest today that we do that rather than having any words to sort of help us think. I just want you to use your own breath today and to learn how to do that if you don't already. Merton has this great quote. It's one of the great quotes of Merton, because somebody asked him about being a hermit or something like that. It was some kind of special life. And he said, in perfectly Merton form, he said, "What I wear is pants. What I do is live. How I pray is breathe." It's a beautiful. I mean, he just, we got right down to what I wear is pants. What I do is live. It wasn't any kind of special category for human beings. What I do is live. How I pray is breathe. Yeah, so this prayer, this breath is a prayer in itself. It needs no words, and we're going down to the place where we're going into the place of the divine, where our heart needs words to express it. That's our, you need a language for as a human being to somehow express your heart. Um, but the divine, uh, silence. Divine's divine can speak any language, but the divine's preferred language is silence. So we are dropping into a kind of silence. Yeah. How I pray is breathe, says Merton. So let's, uh, when we do our, when we shift in a minute to a meditation, I'm just going to encourage you to do a few of these breaths where you're just breathing in, just sort of middling kind of breath, not real full or anything. And on the out breath through pursed lips. And with each breath, try to evacuate more of the stale air, the stale prana, as the Hindus call it, the stale thinking that can actually just settle in your body. And so with each breath, try to be a little more vigorous in terms of getting rid of every cubic centimeter of stale air in your body. And just easy does it, but it'll take you a few breaths to where you really feel like with the, you feel your stomach sort of eventually as you warm up with this, you warm up the muscles, it can sort of push back towards the backbone. And then you really getting rid of all the stale air. Mostly we just breathe up here. That's enough to survive. It's not enough to thrive spiritually. So we're really working with the lower belly on this, and take your time with it. But it's not the whole meditation. It's the way to break the surface tension and actually get into the body. And when you feel like you've really emptied out, or you feel like you're really in the body, just let that go, and then just breathe normally. And then it's a normal thing where you're just present, open, and available to experience whatever's there in the silence, in the emptiness, uh, in the stillness. Okay, so let's go to meditative mode and give this a try here. Just experiment with it.